Okay, the beautiful Miss Katie Merrill is putting our stone paper texture onto the column sides, in which case we weren't careful about the crinkling. It goes in every which direction so that we get a more accurate, or at least a different bark texture. Don is wailing on the church that I gave up on putting recessed openings in. I had plastic PVC 1x4 in here doing a circle to set the cathedral window down into it, trying to get that natural shadow and highlight in this opening, but it's just too much. So we got to start cutting things. I wanted to do these cathedral window here. I wanted to do the same type thing on this side and have that opening set back inside so you get a jam shape and all of that, but I can do that later in the week if we end up having the time. But right now it can be a smooth surface and we can just stick pictures of windows to it. And we got cardboard doing the curve here. We got the fog machine plumbed through the hole in the floor. I got rid of the supplied hose for right now. We just skipped a short section over to the fog machine there. And then on this side we've got the geyser, fog geyser set in with a, let's see if I can look in there. Just a piece of sonotube that makes sure it all comes through. This has 2 lights, so you can do 2 colors. We can't take advantage of the other color, but that's fine. The red or the orangey red fog here is just fine. And the lovely Miss Merrill also put all of our cardboard pieces up and our apron on here, which smooths out the underside. They all ended up the same exact piece, except the ones on either side at the front needed to be trimmed a bit so that if there's a seam that can be seen in the 2 shades of gray, I wanted it to be dead nuts on center. Nobody cares but me, but I am going to watch all the shows. These, if they're not plumb, once we have the PVC in there, you can get tapped to the left or the right until they are plumb, checking with a square, and then you can use a slice of the same size pipe, and if you slice it and then slice it so that it opens like a cuff, you can yank it apart and snap it around itself, the same size, it'll snap around there, and then you could put a little glue and basically choke either side of this thing and allow it to glue so that it forces that into plumb, and just chase each one of these from the center all the way out to the back, yanking them left or right to make them plumb. They're just a long lever on the side of the joist that may or may not, the joist in here may have a little bit of a twist that you wouldn't care until you stick something tight to the side and start comparing it with other things and it's not quite plumb, which is irritating. So that's the type of thing that we're going to do with the handrail. What else? This fire. I've got a fire pit. So it's my Milwaukee fan, which is quite tall. So I took a 12-inch sonotube that it fits inside of, and I set it down through a circle of plywood, just so that on a piece of 3/4-inch plywood, so it's hovering off the floor with a cardboard skirt wrapped around it to obscure that. I punched the bottom full of holes so the fan can breathe, and I put a hole in the side so that you can turn the fan up and down in here. And then we got this flat rechargeable lamp with a gel on it so the color's correct, and it sits on top of the fan when it's running. So the fan blows the paper and the paper glows up here. And then there's 4 positions in here from the front, 1, 2, 3, and 4, that have these little cans I got from Amazon for like the center of your table. They've got 3 settings on them. The first one has like a flame flicker, the second's full on, and the third is glowing. Anyway, when they're in there through the paper, they complete the look from here to the top of that cardboard tube has a light happening, and then we'll look at this when it's fully running, but I wanted to break it down here the way that it's constructed. And that makes a nice fire analog, basically. So the tube has got those hole plugs that came out. They were circle hole saw holes from actually the holes that the weights slip into the trees. So the plug that came out, I just hacked the side off of it and stuck it on 1, 2, 3, 4 to make a little shelf to hold these at the right height. And then I blended up to them with tin foil, and then I started on the tin foil with the tissue paper and kept going with like a fire shape. And then just arranged some real branches in here the way that I like them and glued them together into 2 kind of pieces that can be put on there all together as one. And then Steven must have completed. No, but he's working on making us extra pieces of tube. So the leftover. Oh yeah, whatever you need, buddy. Yeah. We have leftover tube in all the different sizes for the trees in the basement. And so I'm glad of it because the 12-foot long sections that we used, they don't quite reach the backdrop portal. So there's a full woodland scene at the back. And then we have another hanging piece that's got some full trees on one side, full trees on the other, and then just some foliage across the top. And these trees don't get to that foliage. So it just doesn't look, the illusion isn't correct from in the house. The trees that I built need to be taller. So what he's done is we figured how high that was, how much more that needed to be. And so he's making me slices of tube. And this is an all hands on deck kind of a day here. We had tech rehearsal yesterday, and I saw all these things for the first time. And so simply figured 20 inches more on everything, so he's making me 20-inch slices. And then the nice thing is that the hexagonal layout of the root ball means that every time this thing sits and stops on a pair of lobes on the bottom, it leaves a pair of lobes on top with a center line that I can eyeball. Put in a 2x4 with a couple screws at all three positions, so I know they're essentially the same kind of. Just keeps things uniform if you're trying to add a piece on here and keep it straight and aligned. But these extra sections should slide onto those, and it should go on and stay pretty normal to the whole axis. It shouldn't be cocked or anything. I'll throw a couple screws in all of those, make a small paper repair, and we've only painted these black. I was also concerned about any changes. I didn't want to go and put the color on there and have to tie in the same colors, because we may make mud kind of, I like them all to be a little different. So on the day that we do that, we may make them live, and then you don't have the same color ever again after it dries on you. So we'd be in a real situation here. Even if we rolled out on top of what we had, there'd still be a weird transition. So a paper texture carefully applied and then blacked out, that will make the whole thing disappear. And then when we dry brush our color, you'll definitely never see that extra piece on top. And that's all the more that we've got to do with that. So Steve's working on that. And what else have we got? This little bird. I'll show you where it's roughed in right now, but the bird that sings along until he pops is just a plumbing drop ear like you'd have for your shower head, bush down to either a PEX or a hose barb type of a fitting that a water balloon will slip over, and then I tape the water balloon on there for good measure. And out the other end of it goes through a hose to a bike pump that's on the post that holds this tree branch that we got from Don's yard, actually. And so I'd like to get that hose to be longer so the little bird's nest can be out here somewhere. Where was I thinking it would be? Anyway, out here farther in the bird's nests and move this whole scenario. But then you can take that balloon and pump it up to a certain size here, and then it should stay. They're going to get a Schrader valve in there so it stays inflated to that size. And then the little bird head is this stupid little dollar store thing that can sing along. But you notice I put a tack on his chin. So if you're just under the tack and you're singing along and then he needs to like try and sing and blow up, if you give it one full bike pump, it goes bang and the little balloon full of confetti all falls back out again. So it's been roughed in enough for tech rehearsal, but we got to hammer the details out. The problem that I have, besides falling over that piece of wood, is that after the body blows up, even if we flat black out the stick for the head, it's just the head in space and it doesn't come off right away. So I got to come up with a way for the body to blow up, and then I'd like to get the head to tip down and out of sight. And if I could make the underside of it all black by tipping behind the branch and the underside being black, it's good enough for stage and screen, for stage, not for screen. Anyway, also there'll be a bird nest, so there'll be quite a big chunk of something there to obscure the head after it tips out of the way. So, and then Shrek's house is no better than 2 pieces of plywood stuck to our old rolling door for right now, but we'll look at that a little later. And I had to take I basically came down to the same exact crescent as that one, with this one that was a lot bigger on the bottom, because we had a clearance problem in the rigging. Once everything was in that needed to be in for tech rehearsal, we couldn't get past and it was getting hung up, so I had to quickly hack that shorter before I skinned this thing. So that skin's just drying, and then we'll start putting shingles on it. So I gotta get back to helping these folks stay moving. We'll see you.